For example, raise information consent for studies within the standard of care. Definition for example, risk is a common affirmative defense by defendants in lawsuits for negligence, essentially claiming that the plaintiff should have thought twice before taking a risk action. Science awards a your rights to no bar, lawsuits of injuries of romance from rights that weren't foreseeable.
Am I entitled to file a medical malpractice lawsuit if I have signed a consent form for treatment?
Most definitely you are. There is actually a separate theory in addition to negligence that you can sue for in a lack of informed consent. Consent of a patient is necessary before procedures performed by a physician. A physician can be liable for a medical battery if they do not have informed consent before giving treatment. With informed consent, a physician has a duty to inform the patient about all foreseeable risks, results, and possible alternatives to treatment. You need to know what your alternatives and options are. To prove a case of lack of informed consent, the plaintiff must again have an expert who will testify to what a reasonable physician would have told the patient about the risks. And the expert must say why the disclosure by the defendant physician was not reasonable under the circumstances. Having said all that, the fact that a consent form is signed before a procedure is not conclusive. A good plaintiff's medical malpractice lawyer can challenge the content of a consent form. They can challenge the time it was signed. Have you already been given that shot that kind of makes you groggy before you're going into surgery? They can challenge the circumstances under which it was signed. Did a doctor talk to you, or were you just handed a consent form by a nurse and said, and told sign here on the line? Was there a proper interpretation of that form? Was it explained to the patient? The most important thing to remember, John, is just because a consent form mentions a particular risk and the patient was informed of that risk, the patient does not consent to malpractice. A physician has to take measures to prevent that risk or harm. So, for example, in a surgery case, if a surgeon injures a nerve or a blood vessel and that injury had been mentioned on the consent form, your attorney can still introduce evidence that that injury occurred only because of the negligent way the doctor performed the procedure. Consent only applies to appropriate care. It doesn't apply to negligent care.
If a researcher uses this wording in talking with parents about the threat, however, the parents might reasonably interpret it to raise a threat of a lower reaction to may lead to a lower likelihood of horrible lower risk of secondary malignancy. They might grossly be distressed of fact decided that one or give a possible rise of secondary cancer. Pros and cons. There is some benefits associated with population-based research involving genetics, especially lower prevalence. Gene variants can differ in nature from those associated with family-based research. In response to the argument for guidelines, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention formed a multidisciplinary group to develop an informed consent approach for integrating gene variants into population-based research.
Before consenting to this procedure, you must take a moment to familiarize yourself with possible problems. Allergic reactions, such as a rash, bleeding internally, infection of the surgical site. Because new connections will be made between the stomach and the intestines, a leak could possibly develop. All surgical procedures involve some risks, but obesity increases the chance that surgery will lead to complications. Before consenting to this procedure, you must take a moment to familiarize yourself with possible problems.
Applic. More than were born prematurely in the United States every day in 2002, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention and Neonatology. Studies were observed how much into the state. More than 50 years of research have offered some software, but critical questions remain to high oxygen and levels was known to carry an increasing risk of retinopathy, but was the either saturation.
Consent is a basic component of many types of everyday encounter, but it is particularly relevant to the interaction between an individual and a healthcare professional or someone acting on their behalf. This is because without consent, many actions that are an integral part of healthcare, such as medical examination or treatment, are unlawful. For example, in a treatment setting, consent is required when a person is asked by a healthcare professional to agree to an examination, treatment, or care. In research, consent is required when a person is asked to take part in a research study or to allow their identifiable personal information to be used for research purposes. When a person seeks another's consent, it shows that they recognize that people should be able to make their own autonomous decisions. It shows respect for another's right to self-govern, to control their own destiny. The concept of informed consent builds on this idea and stresses the importance of giving a person making a decision enough relevant information to enable them to make meaningful decisions about themselves and their lives.
Conclusion. How exactly should the support researchers have discussed the drives, potential harms and benefits with families before their children were enrolled? Concerns with raising that informed consent had not been properly utilized and the Office for Human Resource Protection OHRP, the federal agency responsible for safeguarding research participants, launching an investigation.
We realize that up to 90% of the people who come to mental health centers across the nation have experienced emotional trauma, whether it is abuse and neglect as a child or witnessing or experienced traumatic events as an adult. Prolonged exposure to traumatic events creates a negative impact on a person's physical, emotional, and mental health. We at Mindsprings Health believe in trauma-informed, responsive, and evidence-based care. Our services are focused on prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery supports. We partner with schools, human services, hospitals, clinics, and others in providing trauma-informed care to services in our communities. We ask, what has happened to you, not what is wrong with you. This approach creates safe places for healing and transformative change.
Transforming care, transforming lives, transforming behavioral health. Please feel free to contact us to learn more.